Welcome back to the Vintage Ballers podcast. I'm your host, Brad Coreno. And on today's episode, we have Marquis Daniels joining the show. Marquis played college basketball at Auburn before spending 10 years in the NBA as an undrafted free agent. Marquis has many incredible stories, including how he overcame a very serious injury on the court in 2011. So without further ado, please welcome Marquis Daniels. Well, again, appreciate you, joining us. And I'll, Marquis, it's funny because I actually have followed your career all the way back to, your Auburn days. And I remember, if I remember correctly, I believe you were on the same team as like Chris Porter for like a year, Porter and Njai and all those guys. And I think it was like Scott, was it Pullman on that team? And you got a stack back then.
Yeah, we were loaded back then. We had a really good team.
Yeah, really Jameson good. Brewer. Yeah. Yep. I remember them. Yep.
Who else was on that team? Kyle Davis. He played Brandon Robinson, Marco Killingsworth.
Yep.
We had some pretty good guys back then.
And people forget how great Chris Porter was back in those days. I mean, he was a great college player.
Man, like probably one of the best college players to play the game. Just raw talent. He was a gamer.
Absolutely. That's back when I was in high school, and I remember watching all the ESPN highlights, and Porter was always on those highlights.
Always dunking. When I'm around, it's like, man, here you go again.
So take us back to your days in Florida growing up as a kid. Marquis, when did you fall in love with the game of basketball?
Man, it's crazy. I first started off playing baseball and football, and I started playing basketball maybe around 9 or 10. Yeah, I just started playing, just going to the park, picking up a ball, going out there and playing. But I first started off with baseball and football. I'm a huge Florida State fan. I thought I was Amp Lee back then, way he ball with the Seminoles. I loved him. My brother, he was a Hurricanes fan, so all those wide lefts and wide right kicks. That was a lot of fun. So, he's picking at me. We were fighting, and my mom kicking us out the house. So it was just good. But I started probably about 9 or 10.
Okay.
Just going to the park, and it was crazy because all I ever wanted to do back then was just crossover. And my brothers, they would never pick me to play with them. Like, man, you play too much. You don't ever want to be serious. You just want to play around all the time. And so one day, I remember one summer, I think I grew maybe 6 inches going to my 9th grade. And it was just crazy. My brother, I remember he was in the bathroom and he looked back at me. He was like, man, what the? He's like, man, you tall as on know what? And it was just, from there on out, I just started taking it serious. And we had the Orlando Magic back then. They used to practice like right in our neighborhood. So I used to like literally walk down the street and see, Penny Hardaway, Dennis Scott, Shaq. And they still remember me now to this day. They was like, man, you used to be bad as I don't know what when we was coming up there. It was just fun just, having those memories and just being able to see like some actual pros. And, even now just growing up and then being a teammate with Shaq and, being good friends with Penny and Dennis Scott and all those guys. It's just how it just comes back around.
I didn't know that story. Yeah, because I had Cedric Henderson on the podcast, and he went to Memphis, obviously, right after Penny, but him and Penny are pretty close. And we talked about Penny and Dream and a lot of the guys in the 90s and that 95 finals with the Magic and Rockets and how dominant the Dream was. I mean, it was just like, wow, you couldn't stop that guy.
I mean, being a Magic fan growing up, that hurt. That hurt.
And Marquis, I feel bad for Nick Anderson because he gets a lot of flack for that series, but he was a great player. And then you know what? That could happen to anybody. And exactly. I know that he still gets flack from certain fans, and it's just, to me, it's unfair because he had a great career and he's one of the best players that ever put that uniform on for the Magic.
He was really good in the community as well. Like, he used to come through, like, the neighborhoods, come through and just talk to all the kids, handing out his shoes and everything. Just being around, making himself accessible to, the younger players like myself growing up that had dreams of playing. He was just really good. And like you said, it was just a tough situation that he had to be in, to miss those 4 free throws. And it was like, man, nobody went up to console him or nothing. It was just like, you on your own. Like, don't nobody care if it. I'm like, man. And then as I got older, I was like, man, that's a tough situation to be in. It's a lot on the line. Who knows? They still may have lost the series, but you never know. It's just being in that situation. I mean, it could make you or break you. And I think he still kept playing, kept going hard as he can. But I think that took a toll on him and the team.
Oh, I'm sure. And again, that team was loaded too. I mean, Horace and you had Dennis Scott, Donald Royal, Jeff Turner off the bench, Brian Shaw. They were just loaded. I mean, and obviously Penny and Shaq. I always tell people Penny and Shaq. My nephews never got to see Penny. They saw Kobe, but I said Penny was. I mean, Shaq even said Penny and Shaq was Kobe and Shaq before Kobe and Shaq.
Penny was nice.
They were that dominant. They were a great duo, and it's unfortunate we never got to see that play out. Obviously, it worked out for Shaq, but Penny with the injuries and of course Shaq leaving, it just didn't pan out for him. But he was every bit, to me, he was the closest thing I've ever seen to Magic Johnson. As far as a pure point guard besides Magic. I mean, he was 6'7", 6'8", could pretty much do anything on the court, and was just a nightmare problem for everybody.
That was actually my idol growing up. Being in Orlando, I played point guard all through high school. It was just like being in Orlando. I'm seeing Penny every night. It was just like, he's 6'6", 6'7". I'm 6'6", 6'7". It was the same thing. It's like, man, I want to kind of take a little bit of Penny's game and try to put it in mind. And just seeing how he used to, just dominate the game, both ends of the floor. It was just something that it was just great to be around and actually have access to it. And then, like I say, even now, it's like he see me and be like, Keys, what's up, man? It's like, man, it's crazy just going from seeing these guys to having to guard them in the game. So, it was just different, man. It's a dream come true. And it's just great to be able to, manifest those things and just work hard to see your work coming in the hand.
I mean, not many people can say they really grew up with their idols and got to meet their idols growing up. I mean, that's incredible. When I was a little bit younger than you, a couple years younger, but I mean, Penny in those days, I mean, Chris Rock did the commercials, obviously. And I mean, everyone knew, every kid my age had a Penny jersey, had a black Penny jersey. It was how it was.
The Penny shoe, the little Penny dog.
Oh, it was the best.
It was the best. Even Daryl Armstrong back then, he's a good friend of mine now.
Oh, yeah.
Like, just him being on the team, it's just funny how all that stuff comes back around. It's like, man, they like, Keys, boy, you was bad as I don't know what when you was growing up. I remember you, and I'm like, man, I ain't like that no more. I grew up a little bit. But just like you say, the Penny doll, those were actually the first pair of shoes I spent over $100 on, the Penny Hardaways.
Oh, they're great. I mean, that was probably like 95-ish around then. Yep. And I'll never forget, everyone imitated those Chris Rock commercials. And that's right when Chris was breaking out too. So exactly. It was a perfect timing. And that was that team, I feel like on the page I run on Instagram, that's probably one of the most popular teams of any team I post about, is that was mid-90s Magic teams. Everyone loves them.
They were loaded, man. I know I enjoyed watching them growing up, just being able to just walk down the street and seeing, all the different guys coming in to practice, the Horace Grants, the Shaqs, the Pennies, the Dennis Scotts, they had their music outside, they dancing, and, we being little kids seeing this coming home from middle school, like, man, one day I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna be like that. And, just seeing it helps to actually see somebody that's in a spot that you want to be. Because it brings it to life, like, man, I can actually do it. This is real life. Because a lot of kids don't get to see it, like you said. It's like a fairy tale almost. So and able to it and being able to, these guys giving you $5, or, hey man, you want to come to the game tomorrow, giving you tickets, or coming to the neighborhoods, passing out shoes, and there was a lot of stuff like that it played a surmounting part in me being the person I am today.
And Marquis, Shaq back then, young Shaq. Did you foresee how great he would be? I mean, obviously he won 4 championships and an all-timer, but at that time he came in and he was pretty dominant right away. But did you foresee everything he would do in his career?
Back then, like I said, I was kind of a little knucklehead back then. So I was like just playing basketball. I didn't really take it serious. I loved the game, but I didn't really think I could get to where I was at now. But he was probably one of the first big men that was able to put the ball down full court, being able to move the way he was able to move, and, just breaking the backboards back then. It was like, man, y'all seen Shaq last night? It was crazy. And I actually grew up liking David Robinson also. So seeing the way Shaq used to like do David Robinson and all those other great centers, it was like, man, this dude is a force. Like, he's easily probably one of the best centers to play the game. Like, just being dominant all the way around. Like, I don't think nobody could stop him. Once he drop stepped, it was over.
Mm-mm.
There was nothing you can do. And then he had that in and out spin move coming at you and tomahawk dunk, man. That was tough to stop.
And like you said, people forget how athletic young Shaq was. I mean, he could take the ball up the floor. I mean, he was just super athletic. And, the only guy I ever saw that really gave him a lot of problems was Olajuwon, was a Dream. And Dream gave everybody problems. I mean,
that Dream shake was real. It was like, hey, I'm over here. No, I'm not. I'm over here.
I'll tell you what. Marquis, I have Pete Chilcott in the program, and he played on that 95 Rockets team. And he
Yeah,
said, watching him do that to David Robinson, that series, he goes, that was just filthy. I mean, I've never seen anything like that. And David Robinson, like you said, he's an all-timer, one of the greatest defensive centers of all time, and Akeem made him look terrible.
he had no answer for him. I mean, no answer. And it wasn't no physical. It was, I'm gonna be finesse. I'm gonna give you this. I'm gonna give you that. The one leg fade jumper, the spin. I was like, man, he was acting like a guard in the post.
Exactly. Yeah, he was just a dream. That's a whole different conversation. We can go on for an hour about him alone. Okay. But yeah, a couple guys I had in the program that played with him said his footwork was impeccable. He just was like he was said, he was a point guard in basically almost a 7-footer's body.
Right.
So how do you stop that? I mean, Shaq even said, he goes, I couldn't stop Dream. I mean, nobody could. He was just
ask for help, double. Somebody come help.
Exactly. And then you had Ori and Kenny Smith and Maxwell and just too many weapons. I mean, they were a great team.
Mario Ellie.
Ellie and Carl Herrera.
They were loaded too.
Oh, they were definitely loaded. Yeah, it was just I wish that would have went longer, that series. I wish it would have went 6 or 7, because I think the teams are pretty evenly matched in my opinion. But I think game 1 obviously took a lot out of the magic, as you said, and Houston had too much experience. You had Clyde and Dream, and they just I think it was pretty much after game 1 it was over.
Yeah, that's probably like I haven't seen a playoff matchup like that that's been pretty much evenly stacked in a while.
I mean, last year, no disrespect to Miami, but I think we all knew that AD and LeBron were gonna take that home. And there's, I think, we'll get to this later, but I think the series you were in 06 with the Heat and the Mavericks, actually, I thought, and we'll get to, I had Josh Powell on the program, and Josh, he had a lot to say about that series, but up 2-0, and I thought it was over. I really did. And we'll get to that later, but there's so much I want to ask you about that. But let's get back to your high school career. And when did you realize that you could play major college basketball?
It wasn't until I went to Mount Zion Christian Academy. I was at, like I said, I was knucklehead all through high school. And I remember coming home my spring break of my junior year, and I come in the house and my bags were packed. My mom was like, "You getting the hell out of here?" I'm like, "Well, where I'm going?" She's like, "You getting out of here?" And there was 2 guys sitting in my front room, and she was like, "You going to North Carolina?" I'm like, "I've never even left Florida. What I'm going to North Carolina for?" Like, she's like, "You going to Mount Zion school up there?" I'm like, "Okay." So I hated it. Probably my first 2-3 months up there. I'd call home every day, like, "Mom, can I please come home?" It was the same school that Trace McGrady went to. And, I think going up there playing against guys that were nationally ranked, and, it was like, because nobody knew who I was. And it was just like, these are the guys that's ranked. Like, this what I'm going against. And it just made me realize that it's just a number. It don't matter who it is. They all got to come out and play and do the same thing. And it gave me a little more confidence. Like I said, I never really thought about college. All I saw was, the Fab Five, Running Rebels, Kentucky, Duke. You see the teams that you see on TV all the time, but I didn't even know what Auburn was when I came on when I first started recruiting me. I was like, and they were ranked number 4 in the nation. I had no idea, because all I knew was what I saw on TV. Those guys, Mashburn, Christian Laettner, and those guys, Greg Anthony, Larry Johnson, those guys. And so when I got here, it was like, man, so this is all. I'm in Alabama. Like I said, I'm from Florida. I never been to Disney World until I got older. When I got my kids, that's the first time I went there, and it's in Orlando. And it was just like, it's a rude awakening. Just going there, like I say, and playing against other guys, like the Keith Bogans, the Joseph Fortes, and those guys back then, like the DeMar Johnson, the Jason Capono, all those guys back then. It was just like, man, you know what? You can play with these guys. Like, it's no different. They just in a different city, different part of the world, but it's still the same game.
And you mentioned Joe Forte. I forgot about that name. I mean, Carolina had so many weapons back then. I mean, every year they had an all-star team, basically.
Yeah, man. Joe Forte, really, really good in high school, man. Like, really good. He was really good.
And you play with? Did they play at Mount or Zion with you?
They were at. Joe Forte was at the Mather. I played against him, and I think the first time I played him was that tournament they used to have at North Carolina. I can't think of it, but it was that tournament out there, and I was like, man, who in the hell is that? Like, killing. He's probably averaging 40 out there. Like,
wow,
easy. He was doing everything.
And when looking at Auburn, for example, like, what made you select Auburn, and what was the process like? What was the recruiting process like?
Like I said, I didn't know much about, the college situation and all that stuff. I actually only took 2 college visits. I had a bunch of teams, bunch of schools offering me, but I went to Iowa State. It was snow on the ground. Me being from Florida, it was snow on the ground in March. I was like, I know I'm not coming here. So I ended up coming to Auburn on a visit. When I got here, it was like 6 hours from Florida. It's not far. It's not too far, and it's not too close. So if I do need to get home, I can, but I'm far enough to where I just can't go home every time. So I think that helped out a lot. And then, me, when I got here on my visit, it was like a family atmosphere. The team was all good. Actually, the guy who hosted me on my visit is my financial advisor now. So it was just,
really,
yeah, it was Damian Fishback. It all worked out. And I actually met my wife on my visit.
No kidding.
He was playing on the women's team at the time. And, I didn't like her at first, but,
we won't play that in this podcast.
Right. So, but it all worked out for the best.
So you had, the legendary Cliff Ellis, of course, was there, and I think he's still coaching, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's at Coastal Carolina. Yep. So I mean, and he's been around for years and years. And again, you came into a team that was loaded. I think the year before they had won almost 30 games, and they were one of the best teams in the nation. So, what was that like? What was the jump from high school to college as far as the physicality?
Actually, it wasn't a big jump for me as far as physicality. Like, I always had a lot of confidence. Like, that part didn't bother me. I actually wanted to transfer my first year.
Oh, really?
I'm in, and those guys was playing like you say, they were ranked. Like, they were really good. But I'm like, man, they sorry. Why they playing in front of me? Like, who are them? Like, that's just my confidence in where I was at. But even though they were good, they respectfully earned that position. But it was like, man, they shouldn't be playing in front of me. And like my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now, she was like, no, just stick it out. Just stay. Come on, just stay another year. I'm like, man, they shouldn't be playing in front of me. And I think that helped me just having that confidence in myself because, coming out of high school, you used to being that person to coming in. It's not like, man, you're not even playing. And I was like, I'm like going crazy in practice, having good practice and everything. Like, why ain't playing? Like, what's going on? But it's a process, and I went through the same situation once I got in the NBA. It was pretty much the same thing.
And what did Coach Ellis teach you throughout those years?
Patience, man, being patient. And I started at every position here.
Oh, did you really?
My first 2 years here, they had me playing the 4 and the 5, which that also played a role in me wanting to get out of here because I'm like, man, I barely 180, like I'm 175 soaking wet. Like, why y'all got me on the post? Like, I played point guard all through high school. Now you got me here playing in the post. And just he taught me just being in the post. It helped me because once I got in the NBA, I posted up a lot of smaller guards. And that helped me out a lot just from being down there, footwork, just learning how to, anticipate on the defensive end, battling down there. And, I went from the 4 and the 5 my first year, the 4 my second year. I played the point my third year because Jameson Brewer left.
I remember, yep.
Here I begged him. I was like, can I please play on the wing, please? And they finally put me on the wing. And, I mean, I literally started at every position here.
Wow, that's incredible. And no wonder why you were so versatile in the NBA, because I didn't realize you started every position. And I remember coming out, I think it was 03, I think you came out and you didn't get drafted. So mindset wise, Marquis, where were you then? I mean, were you thinking, I don't really want to try out for the NBA? Do I want to try? What was your mindset at that point?
I never forget, I had my mom and them, they all wanted to put a little draft party thing together, a little get together. So we all sitting there, we eating. And I think after the first round I went outside and like everybody was like, man, you all right? You all right? Like, I was so mad that I just looked at my mom and I said, I'm going to make everybody pay. I don't care if they're on my team. I don't care who they are. They're going to pay for this because I don't play. I know I went to different workouts with some of these guys that's getting picked. And I'm like, I know I'm better than them. I was like, I'm going to make everybody pay. I don't care who it is. And maybe as soon as the draft went over, Dallas called me. And it was like, they wanted me to come to the Summer League, be with them. And right after I hung out the phone with them, Orlando called. And a bunch of teams started calling me. I was like, I already committed to Dallas. I'm just going to Dallas and play with them. And it was strange, even that Summer League, going there, they were like, yeah, we saw you when you played against Wake Forest, against Josh them, and we thought about taking you in, but, Josh, so it was like, okay, all right, y'all going to pay for this. So we played maybe 1 or 2 games, and then like the second game I had like 38. And in the summer, and they were like, you can't play no more. I'm like, what you mean I can't play no more? It's like, well, we don't want you, nobody else to see you. I'm like, what you mean? Like, I just want to play. And so after that game, Danny Ainge called my room that next day, and I actually hung up the phone like, man, this ain't Danny Ainge. He called back like, this is Danny, we want you to come to Boston. Have you signed with Dallas? So I'm like, nah, I haven't signed, but they gave me my chance first, so I'm gonna be loyal to them. And I mean, it ended up working out the best. I ended up still going to Boston and being there. But it was just crazy how it worked. Just trusting that process and believing in myself and betting on myself that, like I said, I was gonna make everybody play because it's easy to say you hungry for something, but like I was so upset. I said, man, I'm starving. They got to pay for this. Like I didn't care if you were on my team or not. We'll be friends off the court, but when you're on the court, I ain't got no friend but Spalding. And I was trying to make it happen for me and my family.
Well, I'll tell you what, I remember that year because I think the next year, you and Josh Howard were on the second team, all rookie team. Right. And again, me and my friends, all we did in college was watch basketball. It's all, whether it's college basketball, NBA. So it's all we did. So I'm a Cavs fan. I grew up in Cleveland. And so we're diehard Cavs fans. We had LeBron that year. It was his first year. Right. And I remember thinking to myself, like, you could have been perfect for this team in the coming years because you're undrafted. We could have picked you up and you would have been great next to LeBron because you could run. Right. You could do so many things that complemented LeBron. And so when I saw you blossoming, you and Josh Howard and all these other guys blossoming in Dallas, I mean, that team started growing and growing. And even when Nash, when Nash wasn't there anymore, you guys just had so many great players. I mean, it was like looking at that roster in 05-06. I mean, beyond Dirk, we all know about Dirk, but beyond him, you guys had tons of talent everywhere and speed. And I mean, you guys, Jason Terry, and you had, of course, who was the small guard you had?
Walker, Antoine Jameson, Stackhouse.
And Devin Harris is what I'm thinking of. Devin Harris. Yeah. I mean, he would talk about someone who can get from rim to rim in a matter of seconds. I mean, I've never seen anything like that. And you guys are athletic. That team became one of my favorite teams to watch in the NBA. And take us through. So you and Josh Howard obviously are kind of growing together. And then, I know Josh Powell's on that team later on. So how did that come about? And do you guys think you were good enough to win the championship? I mean, were you thinking to yourself going into 05-06, like, we can win this thing?
That's another strange situation. Like, I wanted to leave the year before that.
Oh, really?
I was really happy with, how the playing time I was getting. So I was like, I need to get out of here. And Josh and Daryl Armstrong, they both were like, come on, man, one more year, man. We got a chance, man. Come on, stay one more year. So ended up staying another year. And I mean, that team was special, man. We had a lot of great talent. And I mean, we just came up a little short, but we were loaded. We had pretty much every box checked off as far as what we needed to win a championship.
And in that 06 finals, so the first two games, you just wipe them out. I mean, it's not even close. And it looks like it's going to be you guys in 5 or 6. I mean, it doesn't look like it's going to be a series. And then, of course, game 3 happens and you're up 13 in the 4th. And we know the whole story, D Wade. And again, Josh Powell went through this too. And he had the same look on his face. What happened? I mean, was it just D Wade came alive or what exactly happened there that changed that entire series?
I leave it at D Wade came alive.
Okay, that's kind of what Josh's response. That's Josh's response too. He had some things to say about that series, and he's like, "Yeah, we'll just, but it just because you guys were, I mean, it wasn't even close those first couple of games, And I thought, how could the Heat all of a sudden? And I know they had a lot of talent. They had obviously GP and White Chocolate, and they had no question they had some older veterans and talent on that team, but you guys had just wiped the floor with them the first couple of games, and
it was a situation where like D-Wade, he did what he was doing. He made his shots. He got to the free throw line a lot. It was just, I mean, he did his thing. I mean, it was a good series, but I mean, it's a lot of things that could be said about it. But hats off to those guys. They had to do what they did, and congratulations to them.
And after that finals, what is it like? How heartbreaking is it to lose an NBA finals like that?
It's very heartbreaking, being up 2-0 in a series that we know we should have probably swept those guys in, or even, like you say, in 5 or 6. But it was the crazy thing about it, my daughter was born the night of Game 6.
Oh, so really?
I wasn't even going to the game. And my wife was like, go to the game. I'll hold off. Just go. I was at the hospital with her overnight. And I actually came to the game in like some shorts and like a little shirt that I was sleeping in at the hospital. And I walked in the locker room and Avery looked at me and was like, hey, you ready? I'm like, yeah. Like, I wasn't going to go to the game. It's my first shot. I'm like, man, I ain't going to that game. It's my daughter. And so, I actually had probably one of my best games in that series. I had probably like 12 points in those, 10, 12 minutes that I played. It was, I came in, gave us a good spark. Unfortunately, we came up short, but that was just a bittersweet night. Like even after the game was over, I had to leave the arena and run straight back to the hospital. You know, later she was born a little bit later after that.
Talk about emotions from low to high. I mean, the lowest of low when it comes to your profession, and the highest of highs in your personal life.
Exactly. So it was bittersweet, but you know, it just puts stuff in perspective. At the end of the day, it's like, you know, you love what you do, but it's still a game. It's still real life that has to happen on the outside.
And the next 3 years, then you play in Indiana. And I think Danny Granger's on that team. You know, they had, I think Hibbert might have been on that team. It was before the Paul George days, obviously.
That was Jermaine O'Neal. Before the trade, Al Harrison, Steven Jackson, Jamal Tinsley. We were loaded on that team also.
Wow, so I didn't realize I didn't realize that team had all those guys before they got traded. So, what was it like when you went there? Obviously, Larry's the GM, and Larry's you have I think is Jim O'Brien the coach back then.
Rick Carlisle.
Okay, so Rick Carlisle, and he would obviously go on to win a championship in Dallas, ironically enough.
Exactly.
What was your Indiana years like, and what did you learn playing with all those guys?
Indiana was probably one of the most challenging years I've had. That's actually the only 3 years I didn't make the playoffs was in Indiana. And it's probably my high scoring year was in Indiana. I think I averaged 14 or 15 one year in Indiana. But it was around that time, I say probably like, I think it's 06, 07. I started like getting a bunch of nagging injuries that like it's actually kind of started in Dallas. Like after my first year, I was actually told I need to retire. And I'm like, man, I just got here. I'm not finna retire. But I didn't know that I was born with spinal stenosis. And that was part of the reason why I didn't get drafted. And I was having a bunch of injuries that came from my spine. And I didn't know until later in my career that it was like, that your spine controls all your muscles and your nerves and everything in your body. And that's why you was getting hurt so much. Cause I was like, man, what am I doing wrong? Like I'm working out all summer. I'm in good shape. Like why I keep getting hurt? Like what's going on? And it would be some games that I would play and I feel like crap for maybe like a month and a half, just feel bad. But, I didn't want to use it as an excuse. I was just like, man, I just got to keep playing because I was already undrafted. I already felt like I had to keep trying to prove myself. So I tried to play through a lot of stuff. And it'd be times I would just hold my head up and I get burning pockets in my arms and my hand and like my neck. It just go numb. And then it was crazy. It was a lot of stuff that I had to deal with that I never really told nobody about. But, I just kept playing, trying to get through it.
And how did you get through it? Mentally, how did you get through that?
It was tough. It was some days like I didn't want to play. Like I was there. I was grateful to be there, but it was just like I'm in so much pain that like, man, how am I gonna get through the day? Like, what am I gonna do to get through the day? And it was just like it could take its toll on you, mentally to the point to where you just like, man, I just can't go today. Like your mind, you're saying like, yeah, I know I can do this, but your body's like, nah. And it wasn't because I wasn't in shape or nothing. It was just from my spine. I was just hurting. And like I said, I didn't know until I had my spinal surgery.
Oh, that sounds terrible. I mean, I don't know how mentally that had to be really rough because I mean, just a little pain, I don't care where it's at, can cause a lot of mental torment. But when you're talking about that kind of pain and that kind of uncertainty, that's as you're an NBA player, and your body, that's what you use is your body to get through things. I mean, that's a lot to go through.
Yeah. I remember in Dallas, I got hit. I was going for a layup and Kirk Thomas tried to block my shot and he like kind of hit me on the forehead. And that's when I first realized how bad my spine was. Like my arms were like, they just were there. It was like I couldn't feel them. And I was like, yo, what is going on? So I came out the game. I'm like, yo, I can't feel my arms. And like, something's wrong. And so that's when I went to see a guy in Hollywood. And he was like, yo, you need to retire. And I'm like, retire, man? I just got here. Are you crazy? Like, it's like, yo, you need to get your spine situation. You need to retire. You got an injury. And I'm like, man, I ain't trying to hear that. So, I kept playing, kept fighting through it. Then actually the game when Kobe had 62 on us in 3 quarters, I got hurt again that game. And it was some phantom play. Like I was trying to box out Ron. I think it was Ron Artest, maybe Kobe, one of them. They barely touched me in my back. And the same thing happened again. And I'm like, yo, what? And I missed maybe 2 months of basketball after that. Just from, trying to get through it. And a lot of people didn't even know. Like my hamstring used to be hurting all the time. I'm like, why is this always like, what's wrong with me? And then, my doctor finally told me that the stuff from my spine was causing all my injuries. And it
Wow.
was,
I did not know
yeah,
about all that.
yeah, it was crazy. A lot of people don't know, but like I said, I didn't try to use it as an excuse. I just wanted to keep playing and keep trying to get better. I mean, it took away from me being as aggressive when I used to play. Like I used to like try to slash, get to the basket every time. But once you get those injuries and it's like you don't really know, you don't like that feeling, you don't want to keep going through that. It's like, all right, I gotta change my game. I gotta do something different. And it was just to the point where I was like, man, I'm gonna just do enough to actually kind of try to keep fighting. Hopefully it'll get better. And it didn't really get better until I had my surgery. By that time, it was my 9th, 10th year, 7th year, 8th year, 9th year. Because it happened in Boston. I came back. That was 8th year, yep. I came back and I played 2 more years. And those 2 years, like, I was actually contemplating retiring. I was like, man, you know what? I could go ahead and get 10. Let me just try to get to 10.
I mean, the fact that you played a decade in the NBA, anybody that plays a decade in the NBA, it's a huge accomplishment. But the fact you played a decade going through what you went through is even more astounding. I mean, that's just, again, I mean, just to play in the league for a year is astounding. To do it for a decade with all of that, that's a lot. I didn't realize that. And I want to get to your Boston days because obviously you play with the big three and Rondo and all those guys, and what a team that was. And in Cleveland, you guys broke our heart, of course, in 2010. I'll never forget that series.
I broke our heart.
And get to that whole thing. Obviously you guys get through. You had injuries the year before you got there. They had injuries. I think KG was out, and I think Paul might have been out too that year. But they had a lot of injuries, and then you get healthy, and people were kind of counting you out. And then of course you make it all the way to the finals, and really could have easily won that thing.
Yeah, that was another heartbreaking loss in the finals for me. It was like, man, another one. I gotta go through this again. Like
you went through the two of the most heartbreaking I could think of.
Yeah, it was rough, but even in Boston, man, I learned so much from playing with those guys. Like, you think you're working hard, and you get in there and you see KG and Paul and Ray and Rondo and those guys. They had practiced 2 hours before anybody, and they're in a full out sweat. And you like, what time y'all got here? Like, we got practice at 9. What time did y'all get here? And they end up working hard, so it will make other people that surround them work hard, because you don't want to be the one that's not working hard when you got players like that going hard. And, like you come from different situations, you thinking you're working hard till you see somebody that's like, okay, I see why you're a Hall of Famer. Like, I see why you're an All-Star. Like, I see the work you putting in, like the dedication that you're going through. And just the way they hold everybody accountable, you don't want to let them down because you see the work they're putting in. So it makes you want to go just as hard.
And KG, what was it like? You see the intensity on the court, but off the court, what is he like? I mean, what is he like in the locker room? What is he like in practice?
Excellent teammate, man. Like, between him and Rondo, they're probably one of my favorite teammates, and Josh Howard and Stephen Jackson. Those are just great teammates, like guys that if you need a car, if you need whatever, you need something to eat, whatever, come over to the house, man. Come, like, they will give you the shirt off their back, man. Just great teammates, like, but on the court, they somebody else. They're not even who they are. Like, they're different human beings, like just the focus and just the passion that they guys play with. It was just like, man, like I know what it takes to get there. So it was just something that you can learn from and try to pass on to other players.
And KG started that trend of blocking the shot after the whistle. Someone shoots in it. I mean, now everyone does that. But back then, no one really did that except for KG 15, 20 years ago. It wasn't a thing until he did it. And now everyone does it. So those guys are all, I mean, Ray, all those guys are trendsetters in so many different ways and what they, some of the things they accomplished. And that team, I mean, that finals in 2010, I thought that was one of the greatest finals I've ever seen. I mean, that was just down to the wire, 2 very evenly matched teams. And of course, the great late Kobe Bryant, what could you say about him in that series? And what did he show you in that series?
Just as relentless, just being relentless throughout the whole series. Just offensively, he took no breaks. Like, if it's even in the game 7, his shot wasn't going for him, but he still played just as hard defensively and offensively. And it was just like, man, like, you just see the greatness in him every play. It's like, it was no breaks. He took no plays off. And he just played hard the whole game and played the right way. A lot of people say, Kobe's this and that, man. It's like Michael Jordan's 1A, Kobe's 1B, LeBron's 1C, however, whatever order you want to put it in. Like, those 3 guys are great in their own ways. And like, all that GOAT talk, like, man, they're all great. Like, let's just enjoy who they were and what they brought to the game.
Thank you. I agree completely. And I get a lot of people on my page, because I run a 90s page. They automatically assume I'm all Jordan. And don't get me wrong, MJ's MJ. But But Bron's Bron, Kobe's Kobe. They all brought something different, and I don't like comparing them either. I mean, I would take any one of those three, and I think he'd be just fine.
Yeah, you'd be good. I don't think it's just so many people just so, and it's crazy because there's a lot of people that probably never played before, never did. It just got so much to say about this and that. Well, he couldn't play here, he couldn't play there. It's like, okay, but he didn't play there, so it don't matter. Like, just enjoy what he did and enjoy what they brought to the game. Like, they all changed the game in their own respective ways. People were going to the basket like Jordan, then it was like Kobe, now it's like Bron or Curry. Like, everybody, those are trendsetters. Like, the stuff Curry's doing is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's crazy. Just like, I actually stay up sometimes late night just to watch what he's finna do. Like, he's probably one of my favorite players to watch.
He's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah, right? Like, and people counting him out. Like, Curry's done. Like, how?
I would.
Like, it's crazy, man. That guy's like, what he made, 94 threes last month?
Yeah, I mean, he's putting up, crazy 50 points and just doing all types of stuff. And it's funny because Clay follows my page, and I have mentioned Clay and Steph a couple of different times, in my story, and saying how those two, because they get a lot of flack from people, and they wouldn't be able to play in the old days. That's BS. Look, these two guys are the two, in my opinion, greatest shooters to ever live. I mean, Curry certainly is. I think Clay's up there too. I don't think you could say Clay isn't one of the top 2 or 3. And just to play for the same team, I mean,
man, Clay got a clip. Like, he can shoot it. Like, between them two, and the crazy thing about it is, like, how are both of them being able to shoot the ball that well without, somebody being upset about it? Like, that's just ultimate teammates. And like, they so happy for each other. Like, it's Clay's rolling, Curry's happy, Curry's rolling, Clay. It's just like they're both cheering, pulling for each other. It's no hidden agendas with those guys. They want to win, but they're going to still be able to do what they need to do on both ends of the floor.
It's so true. And they're both underrated defenders. I mean, and Steph tries as hard as he can. Obviously, he's not an elite defender, but he's, he tries out there and he's doing what he can do. And Clay, to me, is a very good defender. I mean, I think he doesn't get any credit for that. But, during those runs, and him and Iggy, and we had to face him in Cleveland, obviously, 4 times, him and Iggy and Livingston and Draymond. I mean, they had so many guys who can defend on pick and rolls. And I mean, you couldn't, they're all big. They're all 6'7", 6'8". So it's just a very underrated team. And I agree with you on Steph and Clay. I mean, Steph changed the game. Let's be honest about it. I mean, the last 15 years, I mean, you don't, the Steph Curry effect, everyone talks about it. I mean, now everyone shoots more threes in college, the college level, the high school level, and you see it. It's just, it wasn't like that 20 years ago. I mean, you wouldn't have 7-footer shooting threes like that. So, I mean, you didn't see Patrick Ewing jacking up threes in the 90s. Now everyone does.
It was actually like Jordan kind of changed it because, if you was 6'6", you was on the block. Like, you go to get on the paint. Like, then Jordan come, it's like, all right, you can play guard. Now it's like, you got people like Curry. I tell my son all the time now, I'm like, he probably scored 90 on me because I'm not guarding him at half court. like shoot that all day you want, but you got to get out there and guard those guys. Like, you can't stay back. You used to pick them at the 3-point line. Now it's like, man, you got these guys got off the bus range.
It's crazy. That you remember that game against OKC where he hit that 50-footer? I mean, I never see anything like that. And I mean, nothing. He came up there just like it's a free throw, and I thought, wow.
Like, how do you guard that? Like,
you can't.
And then he don't get tired. He pass the ball and just keep running. Like, all right, man, you got it. Back then, you had to deal with, Reggie Miller and Rip Hamilton, those guys. It's in the half court. But now it's like, pass, run through this, run through that screen, run through this screen, run through that screen, and then he may give you this, and then shoot a 3. Like, nah.
It's way. Crazy. And his handles. He has crazy handles.
Crazy. Exactly. It's crazy.
It's incredible how much the game has changed, Marquis. And really, since you got out of the NBA in the last 10 years to now, from 2013 to now, the last 8 years, it's gone from, I mean, it went from in the 90s, a more low post, obviously centered around the Shaqs and Olajuwons and Ewings and Robinsons, to now it's really, if you don't have an elite shooting guard, it's you're not, or guards, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, you're in trouble. You need a couple shooters on your team. And actually, it's almost like 4 guards and a big.
Really? And I'll say the Lakers. I know if people hearing this are probably thinking, what about the Lakers? That's because they have Bron. He's a different beast. He's an exception.
He can play the 5. Like, he's big
exactly.
5s. Like, so it don't matter. Like, he's just, man, Bron is a different type of guy, man. Like, 6'8", 250, 260, and run like a 5-year-old. Like, that's crazy, man. Can you imagine him? Who's gonna stand in front of that to take a charge? I know I ain't.
No, nobody ain't. And when you played against the Marquis, how did you, like, back then, he wasn't as good of a shooter 10 years, 10, 15 years ago. Now he can shoot a lot better. At least he's more efficient now. And he was tough back then, obviously, but he could jump out of the gym back then.
He
But he
was super,
really has honed his game to the point where he's just almost flawless.
yeah, super athletic, strong. Just IQ was just through the roof. Like you could try to take this away from him, but he's gonna find a way to get his teammates involved. And he gets a bad knack that he don't take the last shot, but he always make the right play.
Mm-hmm.
So he gets a bad knack because he make the right play and they may miss. It's like, but that's the right play. Well, if he was this and that, he would have shot the ball. Yeah, but he made the right play. If he make it, y'all gonna be happy. So I'm glad he's just sticking to what he's doing and being true to himself and not allowing the critics and nobody else to have an effect on what he's doing in the game of basketball.
I completely agree with you on that. And there was a play back in the 07 Eastern Conference Finals against Phillips and those guys in the Rashid and the Pistons. It was end of game 2 and he kicked it out to Danielle Marshall. I think it was Danielle Marshall, and he missed a 3 to win the game, and people blamed it on LeBron. I mean, it's just like, hey, Bron made the right play. That was the right, because I think you had Sheed and Ben Wallace coming at him. What is he going to do? So, he kicked it out. And I don't, we ended up winning that series, but they gave him a lot of flack after that. I thought, what is the kid supposed to do? I mean,
That's just the way of the game now. There's so many people got so much to say about stuff that they probably wouldn't do it. Like,
exactly.
I get things that irks me is so many people, like, they see an NBA player and they be like, oh, he's sorry. Like, you do know that person will probably give you 100, like 50 points easily. Like, he's in the NBA for a reason. Like, he's not sorry. Like, those other guys are just, a little better than what he is, but he's in the NBA for a reason.
Completely agree.
It's just people but then again, I didn't realize how bad it was until I stopped playing and I kind of got on the outside looking in. It's like, these fans are crazy. Like, they just say anything. Like, you don't realize until, like I say, you get on the outside and you're like, man, these people will say anything.
Oh, they will, especially on social media. I mean, I get it all the time on my page, and most fans on my page are pretty good. They just enjoy the 90s, but you have people constantly bashing this era or that era. And it's like, look, I'm not here to bash eras. I'm celebrating the 90s, but I love this era. I love the 80s. I love, I just love the game. So there's no need to bash another era to lift up, the 90s. I mean, the 90s was great just with the 90s. You don't have to bash the current era. And
exactly.
To me, I love the fact that it changes over time. I think that's what makes the 90s unique, is that the fact the game's so different today.
Yeah, it's just like, even with, they be talking about, oh, this person getting this amount of money. It's like, you set that trend you set that table for them. Like, you should be happy that it's being broke and these people are being able to make more money or do more for their families and stuff. Like your time passed. Like, just enjoy. Like, even from when I played, I'm sure that it was older guys that was like, man, he got this, he got that, but like, it just keep moving along. Like, guys are gonna keep breaking records and keep making more money, keep setting the trends and keep setting the bar higher for our kids, their kids, their kids. And like, as long as it keep evolving, I think it's a good thing. It's like anything you do, it's like from music to TV to sports, like, you got to keep evolving. Like, nobody wants to see something that's stagnant. Like, can you imagine watching 1960s basketball right now?
No.
And nothing wrong with 1960s basketball, because I'm sure it was great back then. But can you imagine these kids trying to watch that now? Like, they'll lose their mind.
That's true. No, that's a great point.
Evolving, you got to keep moving along. And if you can't keep moving along with the game, then watch something else. Do something else. But don't bash these guys for doing what they do.
Marquis, that's an excellent point, especially when it comes to business or anything. I'm an entrepreneur. If you're not constantly keeping up with what's going on, you're irrelevant then. I mean, you can be irrelevant after 6 months.
Exactly. You're in the way. You can't bash these people for being creative and innovating their thought process to just keep making the game better, no matter what it is.
Exactly. And I have a few more basketball questions for you before I want to get to your rap career real quick. So as far as basketball is concerned, I remember I think it was 2011, you ran into Gilbert Arenas on the court and you collided with him, and it was a terrible, I mean, no one knew at the time you're going to be paralyzed. What was going on? It was pretty, scary. What was going through your mind at that time? Do you remember any of that? Did you black out? What was that like?
I was actually paralyzed the whole time I was on the floor. Like, I couldn't move. All I could do was talk, like move my eyes and blink and stuff. And I remember Kevin Garnett like leaning over, he's like, yo, you all right? You all right? I'm like, I can't move. He's like, what you mean you can't move? I'm like, I can't move. Like, I'm actually trying to, move your arms, move your legs. And I just couldn't move. And that was, it wasn't scary, which is kind of crazy, because my religion and my faith is so strong that I just kept just kept saying, the devil, you gotta try harder than this. You gotta try harder than this. Like, you gotta try harder than this. Like, it's no way I'm raising my kids in a wheelchair. Like, you gotta try harder than this. And so on the way to the hospital, my nerves started firing back up, and that pain was so bad. Like, it felt like somebody was just putting cigarettes out all over my body because my nerves were firing back up. And they were like, you can't play anymore. I'm like, I don't care, as long as I could walk and I could, be with my kids. It's like, well, you got to have spinal surgery. I'm like, why if I'm not playing anymore? It's like, well, you could be in the car, you could be in a fender bender, and, you get whiplash and it happens again. So I ended up getting the surgery. I got 3 screws and a sling in my spine right now to keep my spine open. And they were like, you can't play. So I come back to Auburn. I remember it was probably about 6-7 months after I come back to Auburn. I play playing pickup here, and I turned, and me and one of the players I was playing here, we headbutt. And usually if I get hit in the head, my arms and everything shut down. And like, I turned when I hit him, I'm like, but I didn't feel anything. So I'm like, oh, I might be all right. But they was like, hey, you got blood all over your face. I'm like, man, I ain't think about that. I'm all right. Like, I ain't, I'm not paralyzed or nothing. So got stitched up. I ended up coming back to Boston that year. And then I went to Milwaukee the year after that.
And just to play again is incredible. And when you look back at your 10 years, what did you learn from playing in the NBA?
Just being a pro at all times, just taking care of your body, the way you approach the game, the way you approach everything, pretty much, just always understanding that there's somebody watching, whether it's, another team, kids, or whatever it is. And always trying to, just being a positive light to people, because you always got to take in consideration of people's feelings, whether you want to sign this autograph or not. Like, this kid could be here waiting all day, or this person could be waiting all day. And just because you having a bad day don't mean that you have to take that out on them. Like, you got to always be appreciative of the people that's, basically helping pay for your salary or whatever it is that you get, that's coming to support you, that's been a big fan of you. Because no matter what it is, and everybody have bad days, but you still have to be responsible for how you respect other people, and just having respect for everybody, just being respectful and just respecting yourself, most importantly.
That's an awesome point right there. Because you come into work every day, putting your hard hat on and coming to work, it's not easy. When you're having a bad mental health day, you're physically feeling bad, you got to come to work. It's, but it's learning how to be a pro, really, and how to do it. So, looking back now, as far as your basketball career, obviously 10 years, incredible. And you're undrafted. Not many people can say they're undrafted and played a decade in the NBA and played a role. You were a key role player on a lot of these teams. You weren't just some random guy. So, that's an incredible career. And I remember you vividly from from Dallas. And I remember, again, that young Dallas team, I remember you in Indiana, and I definitely remember you in Boston. And I remember the collision and everything. So it's just that your whole career, it's fun having you on the show, growing up watching you. And I want to transition now into your rap career, because I grew up listening, I'm 37. So I grew up when I was younger, my brother and his friends who were older than me, they were listening to, all the guys in the 80s coming up. You got Dre and Snoop. And of course you had NWA, you had, Run DMC and all these different guys. Now, I in the 90s, Pac and Biggie, and I grew up in Cleveland. So Bone Thugs was everything here. So and I'm trying to get Crazy on the show. So Crazy, if you're listening, I'm trying to get you on the show. Going back in those days, who are your influences rap wise? And, who really, how did you get into rap music after basketball?
And my first cassette tape was the Beastie Boys.
I love the Beastie Boys. Love them.
Like, I still remember getting that tape. And I think the Click. You remember the Click? They were they were in the Midwest area.
The Click. What? I
might know what. With the green car on it. I think E40 was in that group, if I'm not mistaken. I used to listen.
I'm gonna look them up after this.
I'm a huge, I'm a huge Tupac fan. And when I was younger growing up, you couldn't tell me I wasn't a hot boy. I wasn't in Cash Money. Like, I had to tie those bandanas all kind of ways around my head, my arm, hold my pants, everything. Like I was a big Wayne and BG fan. Like huge on those guys. Gucci Man, of course, Lil Boosie, all those guys. Of course, Trick Daddy and Rick Ross, and people in Florida. I'm always support my Florida rappers, and I was just really big on down south rap. Outkast, Eight Ball,
Ghetto Boys and all. Yeah.
Ghetto Boys, yeah, all those guys. Bun B, Pimp C, just all those guys. Paul Wall, Swisher House, all those guys. Chameleon, like Big Tug DS. I was big on all the down south rap. Like it was just like, even though those guys were my age, it was still music I was listening to, because it was like, I feel like I was growing up with them guys, the Yo Gottis and all them, and just listening to their music and growing up. And I just started rapping. It was funny. Somebody told me, they sent me a message the other day on Instagram. It was like, I remember you said once you get to the NBA, you was gonna start rapping. And like, she was a girl that went to school with us. Like, we used to sit outside and I used to be freestyling all the time. And they used to be like, man, you can rap, you should do the rap thing. And I'm like, man, I ain't, But then I just started doing it, and it was kind of fun. I think that's probably a big rush, like when you actually performing and people on stage and they know your music. It's like, man, y'all actually listen to my music. Like, I still have a lot of people telling me now, man, you just put out another album. I'm like, man, I'm 40 years old. Like, what you want me to talk about? Like, my daughter raps, so she actually made me get on a song with her that we just recently did.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are you gonna release that?
It's out. We put it out. It's called 101. Her name is Raya Too Crucial. It's on Spotify, Apple Music. It's on all the outlets.
Okay, I'm gonna check it out on Spotify. That's awesome. Yeah. I love the fact you did that with your daughter.
Yeah, it was because she actually shocked me one day. She come in, I hear her upstairs rapping. She posts something on her Instagram. I'm like, so I call him like, this what we doing? Like, yeah. I'm like, you writing this too? I was like, all right, I'm gonna take it to the studio. So I took it to the studio, and she got probably like 4 or 5 songs out. She hadn't been able to do much music lately because she plays basketball right now. She's pretty good. She's about 6 foot in the 9th grade.
Wow.
Yeah, she's pretty. But my son, he's 12 and he's 6'1", so he's
wow.
Yeah, but he loves baseball. Like,
really?
Loves it. Yeah, he's really good at it. Loves it.
Well, tell him the Indians up here can use a power hitter.
He loves it, man. I'm like, dude, you don't touch a basketball. If you're gonna play, but don't worry about it. Like, just playing. But he's actually good at basketball. But if he got to pick and choose, he's going to pick up that baseball, which I don't mind. Good.
What position does he play?
Plays pitcher, shortstop, second, third, and center.
Wow, you can do a lot.
Yeah, he's actually getting better at pitching. He just started really liking it, so he's pitching really good now. So he's loving it. He's loving it.
That's very cool. And I bet they look up to you a lot, knowing that you're obviously a former player and at the biggest stage. I mean, you're a huge role model to them.
The thing what kind of caught me off guard was my daughter said something to me one day. I was like, well, you got to work hard. She was like, I know I got to work hard because I see you go to work and you work hard every day. And it was like, man, y'all like really paying, like, and I never thought that, they looking at you, but I didn't think she was paying attention like that to what's going on. It was just like, just hearing them say stuff like that, it just makes you want to go harder and just keep motivating them to try to be better in life.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That really is. And I want to put you on the spot here for a second.
Oh.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Who is on your Mount Rushmore of rap artists all time?
Oh, man. How many people I get?
You get 4. And you can sub one. You can have another one on the outside.
I got to go Tupac. I got to go Lil Wayne. Man. Tupac, Wayne. I like Jay. Jay-Z nice too. I like Jay. I'm gonna probably Drake Cole. It's hard to not go with Drake. Drake Cole. And I'm gonna go Tupac, Wayne, Drake, and Jay-Z. And if I had to sub one, I'm a big Gucci Man fan. I got to put my boy in there. I got to put Gucci in there.
I like how you mixed eras too. It wasn't just one era. I mean, there's so many you could put up there. I've thought about that before, and I'm thinking I can't even narrow it down because there's so many. I mean, I'm a big Ice Cube fan. Like, there's so many different people you could put up there that I don't know where to start. I think for me, Tupac's the only one for me that's for sure on there because I'm a huge Tupac fan.
I got to add one more. I got to add Snoop too.
Oh yeah, you got to have Snoop. I forgot about Snoop. Yeah.
Man, that's a tough question, man. That's tough. That's tough.
It is. I mean, I don't know. I mean, again, there's so many, and I think when I grew up, like, you had just the influence of some of that, like the Bone Thugs and the Ghetto Boys, and a lot of the young kids don't know a lot of the Ghetto Boys. They don't know who they are, but they were a huge influence on everybody back then. I mean, Mine Playing Tricks on Me is probably I think it's one of the greatest songs of all time.
Yes, sir. Yes,
and it changed the game. And so you just had, and then of course Snoop and Drake come along, and then it's a real game changer. Yeah. And it just rap back then to me in the 90s and early 2000s. Like you said, Jay-Z obviously came onto the scene, and you had so many different, and Lil Wayne later on. Right. Just so many influences. I mean, it's incredible. Of course, we can't forget Eminem, and there's just so many. Where do you begin?
It's too many. Yeah, I have to go with Jay, Wayne, Drake, Tupac, Snoop, and Gucci Mane.
Okay, I like that.
I got to have those. Yeah, I got to have those guys in there.
That's a solid list right there. You can't go wrong with that. Did you happen to see on Netflix, probably about 3 or 4 years ago, they had a documentary called The History of Hip Hop?
Yeah, I watched it.
It's fantastic. Yeah, I loved it. And I like how they went from like the East Coast to the South to the West, and
really?
So you got to see how it all came about. I didn't know a lot of those stories, and a lot of the people you don't think about.
It definitely showed how old you were, because some of those sessions, it was like, hey, I remember when this was out. Like, my kids looked at me like, who is that? I'm like, yeah. I remember one day we were in the house, and me and my wife was listening to Biggie. And so my son, he comes in, he's like, who is this? I was like, what? like, you don't know Biggie? He say, no, I don't know Biggie, but I know Young Thug. I was like,
isn't that sad though? They don't know. Like, it's like my nephews are the same way. I put on Tupac, and they're like, who's this guy? I'm like, this is Tupac. Like, I'm like, man, I got to get these kids up to speed.
Yeah, it's crazy. But one thing I can say, my daughter, she does listen to, like, she likes Tupac, she likes J. Cole, she listens to a lot of music. But at first, they be like, man, who is this? They get in the car with their headphones. Like, y'all don't think my music good? Like, I'm good jamming. I got good music. But now, it's different now. Like, even with the music, like, I be in the weight room and the guys be working out our team. I be shazamming the music. Like, man, who is this? And then I may end up playing it later someday. I'm like, all right, this Pooh Shiesty, he pretty good. Like, I like different music now. I'm a music head. I just like to hear good music.
I'm the same way. And my nephews get me into so much newer R&B and rap, because I don't know a lot of the new stuff. I still listen to a lot of like Devin the Dude, and I've been listening to people like 20 years. And I love Devin the Dude's my guy. That's probably my favorite rapper of all time. But him and Tupac. But it's funny because like when my nephew will play, oh, you listen to this, listen to that, and I have no idea who these people are, none. And I listen to them like, yeah, this is actually pretty good, but it's kind of cool being turned on to music, and then I'll play some stuff for them. I'll play old Ice Cube or whoever, Devin, whoever I'm playing, and I get them into it. So it's kind of cool to have that back and forth. Yeah,
the thing that's funny to me is when you play a song that somebody sampled, and they be like, "That's where that come from." I'm
exactly.
Like, yeah, like they didn't start that. Like this song's been out. They be like, "Oh man, I thought this was." I'm like, "Nah, this is the same stuff. They just sampling everything."
And a lot of the samples are from the from the 70s. A lot of the real samples. So it's like you're talking Marvin Gaye. You're talking like real, like the true OGs back then.
Right. And they have no idea about it.
No, and I didn't know about a lot of that till I got older, as far as like a lot of the samples from the 90s. I'm like, oh, I get it now. It's from, so-and-so or Luther Vandross or whoever it was. It's kind of cool to have that connection.
Exactly.
So, all right, I have one more question for you, and I ask every guest this question. I love hearing the answer. Marquis, when you look back years from now, and you have grandkids and they're coming up to you, what do you want them to know about the legacy of Marquis Daniels?
God-fearing, family guy, wasn't afraid to take chances. Just was a guy that if it was something he wanted to do or something he wanted in life, he went out and did it. Like, prime example, from the rapping to me coaching to me playing. Like, if it was something that I wanted to do, I didn't let nobody or nothing deter me. Like, I never really been good at caring about what people think about me. So I just want them to feel, if it's something you want to do, just do it and live with it. And live with your decision.
I love that. Life's too short not to. It really isn't. I mean, or it really is. So I think that's a great answer. And just going after what you want, and you're pretty diverse in what you do. So I think you're a great role model to a lot of people. And I appreciate you coming on the show. I could talk to you for another 2 hours. So we have a ton of stuff we could talk about, but I really appreciate the time. And, you're welcome back on anytime.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Take care, Marquis.
All right, you too.